And I will say welcome to everybody and thank you for joining us for our April huddle. We think this will be a slightly short one, maybe we'll, 45 minutes, something like that. But we're happy to answer all your questions. So no rush, no worries. We are going to talk about state legislative maps, about congressional maps, about pressure on the court and other nonsense, and then actions that you can take. And so I'm going to run through the stuff about the state legislative and congressional maps really pretty quickly, but we're going to give you a lot of useful links, and we're going to, happily answer any questions that you have. So the main thing to know is that we are still waiting. We're waiting for the Ohio Supreme Court to rule on the General Assembly maps. We're waiting for them to rule about contempt of court. We're waiting for them to rule, to take the next steps on congressional map. And we're waiting for the federal court, which has a case about the General Assembly maps. So just to go through that in a little bit more detail. So, we had 3 sets of legislative maps that were struck down by the court. And then we had that whole rigmarole where they said, use an independent mapper, be transparent, work together. And they hired independent mappers and they set them up in a room and we all watched and we saw them. We saw the sausage being made and they did all the things that we wanted them to do. And they were this close to producing a map. In fact, they did, basically finish a map, but the Republicans on the commission were bound and determined to see them fail. And so they slowed everything down and made it impossible for them to finish by the midnight deadline. And they swapped in another set of maps, which was actually just basically identical to the 3rd set of maps with a few little tiny changes. And so that was adopted along a 4-2 vote with Faber abstaining. And of course, it was immediately challenged again by the same groups that have challenged the other 3 sets of maps. And we are waiting on the court to make its decision there. We also are waiting about the congressional map, because there was a first congressional map that was drawn by the General Assembly that was struck down by the court. A second congressional map, sorry, did I say General Assembly? Second congressional map was drawn by the Ohio Redistricting Commission. And unfortunately, the court decided that it didn't have jurisdiction from the lawsuit kind of continuing, and that groups that wanted to challenge that map had to start afresh. So 2 groups did start afresh with new lawsuits about the congressional map. And they set a schedule, but that schedule is kind of over the next couple of months. There's not going to be a decision anytime soon because they have discovery and, all of those other things. So that is going to happen a little bit slowly. Meanwhile, we are also waiting to see what's going to happen with the contempt filing. The court itself had asked why the commissioners should not be held in contempt. It tried to prod them into continuing their work on maps, which they did. And so it kind of postponed any hearing. And then when they pulled that whole thing with the bait and switch, where they didn't adopt the independent mappers map and they put in a different one, the league and another group as well, asked why they shouldn't be held in contempt because they were not following the order of the court. And the commissioners responded, and we're waiting to hear what the court says. It's really interesting because the Republicans on the commission and in the General Assembly have been adopting a kind of run out the clock strategy. And somebody mentioned the other day that we really should think about the fact that the 3 justices on the Ohio Supreme Court who have all along been saying these maps are fine, the ones that are dissenting, the ones that, are pro gerrymandering, as it were, they may also be trying to run out the clock. Why haven't we had any decisions yet? Why is it so late? Why is this taking so long? Perhaps they are also holding things up and making things go slowly. So we don't know, but that's just something to think about. The primary has, of course, been affected by this. We are in a primary has begun, early vote has begun for the May 3rd primary, and it basically the May 3rd primary has everything on it, including congressional districts, except Ohio House and Ohio Senate races. And those will be held, there will be a second primary that will be held at a later date, probably August 2nd, but we don't know for sure. The General Assembly is essentially refusing to say, what they want or to set a date. This is enormously expensive, enormously confusing. Turnout for this primary is already 40% lower than the same 4 years ago, which would be a relevant comparison. And everyone's confused, even folks who care a lot and are, following this and who, are trying to pay attention, they're confused. They're saying, wait, why are we voting on congressional maps when that isn't set yet? Great question. Well, we are, so that's the state we're in. Now, there have also, so far I've just talked about Ohio Supreme Court cases. We also have federal cases, and there is federal cases on both the legislative maps and the congressional map. So right now, basically, the federal court has the three judge panel has really tried to stay out of it. They've really tried to say, you know what, this is in the purview of the Ohio Supreme Court. Let's let them try to sort it out. If they don't do it in time, then we will intervene. So right now they are essentially, they asked for briefs from the litigants saying, for the parties to file briefs saying what they want the court to do. Should we have a primary? Do we need to have a primary? Is it unconstitutional if we don't have a primary? What map should we use? Is it possible to use this map? Is it possible to use that map? And right now they're just kind of, they're waiting because they want the Ohio Supreme Court to act. But we're all waiting and nothing's happened yet. So the judges did set April 20th as the drop dead date in terms of we have to have a map by then if we're going to have a primary by August 2nd. Because when you kind of go back and you realize like you have to figure out what districts people are in and you have to send, the overseas military ballots, et cetera, there has to be that much time in between. So we have until April 20th to actually adopt maps, or the court will have to intervene and do something else. So last thing here, before I'm going to turn it over to Colin for kind of latest update. There was also a federal lawsuit about congressional maps that had to do with the Voting Rights Act. But basically what the outcome of that right now is that has been set aside, and they basically said, no, they're not going to block the certification of the races. The congressional race is going to go ahead. If they, if they want to continue with that suit, they'll have to do it separately. So we're waiting. Basically, the summary of all of that is we're waiting. The congressional maps are not finalized yet. And even though we're voting on them, they're still being litigated. And we don't have legislative maps at all. So Colin, is there anything you'd like to just add or clarify? Or I haven't been looking at the questions because there's so many. Any questions in the chat that you would like to answer?
Yeah, thanks, Mia. And there aren't a lot of questions in the chat. There's some pretty funny banter, though. So keep it lively and it's entertaining. But I did want to just give a brief rundown on what was filed on Tuesday, April 11th. And a follow-up to what Mia was discussing about the federal lawsuit dealing with congressional districts. Yes, that lawsuit was technically thrown out, but on procedural grounds. And the judges actually went so far as to say that this case should be decided on its merits, but a new case will have to be filed. And actually, those sets of petitioners are planning to refile in the Northern District of Ohio either today or tomorrow. So that lawsuit will continue. I don't know how that'll play out or if there will be any sort of conclusion, but that lawsuit will be refiled in the Northern District per the attorney for those petitioners. However, getting to General Assembly maps, and I must share some frustration with you that our federal judiciary is nowhere near as transparent and as accessible as the Ohio Supreme Court is. To view any documents from federal court, you have to pay a subscription service, and you actually have to pay for digital downloads of these documents. So it's not very accessible. It's a fact of life that is certainly inconvenient. But recapping our filings on the 11th, essentially there's a lot of commonality between what the plaintiffs, Secretary LaRose, and the League of Women Voters and ACLU and all of us want. All three groups are asking the federal court to make a determination by April 20th. That date has been agreed upon by all three parties. That is when a map should be implemented in order to have an August 2nd primary, which is what Secretary of State LaRose has been advocating for, in order to have a second primary, but not have that kind of interfere and run into general election planning. And we also all agree that the people of Ohio are entitled to a primary. So there were some questions asked by the three-judge panel earlier in the process, kind of asking what's the legality of even having to have a primary in Ohio. There's consensus that we do need one, and that the court should act to ensure Ohio voters have a primary for state legislative candidates. Where we differ, however, and unsurprisingly, is on the map that folks are wanting the three-judge panel to implement. Secretary LaRose and the petitioners are looking to have the panel implement a Redistricting Commission approved map. They kind of have thrown up their hands and said it doesn't really matter if it's the third or the fourth. Their argument is that the third has already begun to be programmed into County Board of Election databases. So that would be convenient to pick that back up. And also they're saying the fourth map is so substantially similar to the third one that it would take it would be less of a burden to implement the fourth one if they would choose that, since the third map has already been invalidated by the Supreme Court. We, however, are asking the three-judge panel to implement the independent map, the map that we all sat and watched for hours get drafted and created, and what our experts have candidly said is a very solid, strong map. It meets all the criteria, both outlined in the Constitution and in the orders given by the Ohio Supreme Court in terms of proportionality of General Assembly seats, and it also equals and balances out the symmetry of competitive seats much better than either the third or the fourth map, which, if we recall, that was the genesis for those maps, or at least the third map, being thrown out. So we are asking the court to look at the independent map, interpret the three previous Ohio Supreme Court rulings on the maps, and to infer that we can reasonably assume that the fourth map will also be invalidated because it is so similar to the third map, which again is why we are all so frustrated here as to why the Ohio Supreme Court has not issued an order on the fourth map. It seems kind of a slam dunk, no-brainer. However, I know it's frustrating for all of us here that we haven't had an order on the fourth map. But that's essentially where we stand. All parties are asking for the court to act by April 20th. All parties are saying that Ohio voters are entitled to a primary, and we our fair districts advocates are saying use the independent map, the map that was built and debated in broad daylight on the Ohio Channel for all Ohioans to see, not the partisan gerrymander and not the bait and switch map from previous decisions. So again, to summarize, we are in a waiting game right now, as we have been for the last week. It certainly, is painful to stay, to stay so attentive and not have any news. But we are here now, and we are finally just waiting on decisions from the federal court and also from the Ohio Supreme Court. I'll scan the questions and I'll try to answer them in the chat. I know we have more to get to. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think we've been kind of answering as we go along, but and you did actually answer one of the ones that came along. So, we appreciate that. But guys, definitely go ahead and, continue to ask questions, as they come up. So another thing that's happened, which you guys probably have heard about and have seen, there's been this nonsense of trying to, sorry, give me 1 second here. Oh, I'm sorry. Of kind of fuss and bother about threatening to begin to try to impeach Chief Justice O'Connor. And honestly, I was looking at the comment that someone made on Twitter today, and it just offends me so much. The thought of all the work that went into passing those redistricting reforms and all the people, Republican and Democrats, and the bipartisan effort and the overwhelming majority, and it became part of our Constitution, and people want her to be impeached because she's upholding the Ohio Constitution. It's really shocking and discouraging. We, I think, are dropping into the chat links to this article. There's also, this whole business that's going on in politics nowadays of projection, where you do a bad thing and then you accuse the people, who you're harming of having done the bad thing. So, here we have the majority members of the commission continuing to pass unconstitutional maps, which has completely messed up the whole process, and the General Assembly refusing to move the primary forward, which has cost a ton of money. And they're accusing the court of being the people responsible for the waste of money and the mess that we're in. No, they're responsible because they are refusing to pass constitutional maps and follow court orders. There's actually a bill that has been proposed by Representative Ferguson. It's House Bill 620. It was just introduced, which says that the $25 million that it will cost to run a second primary should be taken out of the budget of the Ohio Supreme Court. Now, hopefully this has absolutely no chance of passing, but, politics is just kind of veered into this crazy world of every bad thing that you do, you blame on the people who have been trying to stop the harm from happening all along. And it's very distressing, I will say. Okay. I think we're kind of moving right along. Unless there are any questions or comments, if anyone wants to comment on anything.
It did look like Jean had a question.
Jean, can you give me an idea of an official position that other nonpartisan groups can share? Yes, Jean, we're just going to come to that in a minute, actually. After our conversation the other day, we thought about that, and we have made a statement, which we're going to get to in about 2 seconds here. So thank you so much. And that is a great idea, Sandy. And we are actually going to come a little bit later. We're going to ask for your suggestions about things we can do next. So I'm just going to go ahead and we will kind of get to those things in a minute. So Libby, I would love for you to go to the corner of Cable and Elita in Lima. And there is a digital billboard there, which currently has this image on it. It will be there until May 2nd, I believe. It started on Monday, because we're trying to bring some of the pressure to Lima. And you guys, I think many of you wrote postcards before. We wrote to Lima area voters And we're just trying to, express our deep, deep frustration and yeah. Sorry, Sue. Anyway, so that's something that's going on in Lima. And then another thing that we would, that we've been really, really pleased at is all the letters that have gone to the editor. So Lisa's going to talk to you a little bit about letters to the editor. I think she is. Let me check that she's on here.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
I'm
Awesome.
here.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we've got some samples. You guys have been really awesome so far about doing letters to the editor. I just have a few here that are good examples of some that we've seen. These are not representative of all the great ones that we've seen, of course. And so they're short and sweet. We've been sharing them on our Fair District's Twitter. So thank you very much, Michael, for doing that. And there's an overall theme that we want to kind of get from these letters to the editor, which is, some pointing out how unfair the process is, discussing, like asking people to join you, and it does give you a good way to feel more empowered and reach out to your fellow citizens. So these are just three of the many great examples, and we do have some additional examples that we can share with you for new letters to the editor, because right now this is the best power that we have, just reaching and annoying folks as much as we can. When I say folks, I mean legislators. So yeah, Mia, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, that's it. Absolutely, we really appreciate it. And Lisa put together some additional samples, which we're going to share in a follow-up document. Tomorrow, when we share slides and recording, we'll have a follow-up document with all of these links, and it'll have some sample letters, which you're free to use, adapt however you like. But sometimes it's easier just to start with something and then you can edit it. And then if that, kind of helps you get started, that's awesome. And we have a suggestion, which is that when you send these letters in, also send them to the members of the commission. Just send them, if you've gone to the trouble of putting together the letter, then go ahead and send it to the commission members as well. We want them to have to face the music that, we know what they've done, and, and we're disgusted, really, and it's consequential, and we're not confused as to the source of the problem. We're not confused at all. And now on to the thing that Jean Henderson was talking about. She has a group that meets in Cincinnati, and they're a nonpartisan group, and they wanted to officially sign on as being, pro fair maps and against gerrymandered maps. And we know we had a petition at the beginning of this whole process and this whole cycle, but this is kind of a statement about how everything has gone and what we're still demanding. And we really, really, really would like for thousands of people and organizations to sign this. And, because we know that, millions of Ohioans voted to end gerrymandering, millions. And so there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't get, tens of thousands of people to sign this statement. So what it is basically a Google form, and it has the statement at the top, which you can read. And if you agree with it, and if your group agrees with it, then you just fill out the information in the form, which is just your name and email, etc., what county you're from. And you can sign as an individual, or you can sign from an organization, or you can do both. And then in addition, we thought, why not kill two birds with one stone? Why not have a way to show the diversity, geographic and otherwise, of all the folks who've been fighting for fair maps in Ohio? So we put a little question on there for you to be able to put one or two sentences about why you care about fair maps, why you're fighting for fair maps, what it means to you. And if possible, also attach a photo of yourself, either just a plain photo, or if you have one from a protest, or if you can take one with the Fair District sign, or you have your, terminate gerrymandering t-shirt or whatever it is that you have from the many years that you've been involved with the fight for fair maps, go ahead and upload that photo. So we're really hoping that we can put together some kind of, something that documents what this movement is. It's not just a few people, it's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people. And we'd love for you to participate in that. And we're also looking for the next thing. Sandy already put a suggestion in. I'm going to put a poll up right now. I have to find the right one. Here it is. I'm going to launch this poll, and I'm going to talk you through it. So basically what I'd love for you to do, you can click on as many actions as you want. I hope that every single person clicks on add your name to our sign-on statement, because I would like 100% of people to do that. I would love it if everyone also said that they were going to do a letter to the editor. If you're willing to, or you have done a letter to the editor, jump right in. We're thinking about possibly some kind of rally outside of the Supreme Court by the gavel there, sometime maybe towards the end of the month. If you'd be interested in participating in that, click on that as well. We're thinking about some kind of vigil, silent protest vigil inside the map room at the State House, where maybe 2 or 3 people at a time. We'd have a sign up so that we have coverage for the whole day or for 2 days or however long it would be, that people come and stand and they, it says Athens County for fair maps, or, Geauga County for fair maps, or whatever it is. And it would be almost like a media event that people would see that this was going on. And so we would have a sign up. We're also thinking about a kind of, a way to thank everyone and get together and be together and share thoughts about our communities and why this is important, either by itself or as a rally, and either as a picnic or a rally or both. So if you're interested in participating in that, please click on that as well. And then we're also thinking about, what comes next? Let's look at what our options are. What are the alternatives? What do they do in other states? So if you're interested in that, go ahead and click there. And by the way, the local fair districts volunteer appreciation thing, we're talking about, the big cities, maybe the 6 or 8 cities in Ohio, but you could also do one in your local area if that's what you preferred. But it would be nice if some of us from Columbus, who've kind of been on the steering committee or whatever, if we were able to kind of get around and join you as well. So I'll give you one more second. Oh, you've had only 53% participation, 57. I'm going to wait till it gets to 70, 62. Click on something. 64, 66. All right, 70. Yes.
Anne's asking if it's possible to resend the poll. Is that possible?
Oh, you mean for you want to do it again?
Maybe some people want to do it again. I don't know. Maybe Anne missed it the first time.
I'm not sure. I can try. Hold on. I'm going to take a little picture of what it says now. And there we go. I'm going to end it. It doesn't, it's okay. I'm going to share the results. Folks can kind of see. So I had a pretty good 97% of you are willing to sign on out of the 127 who took the poll. Lots of folks are going to write a letter to the editor. That's awesome. I'm super excited about that. I think we would have a good participation in our rally. A little bit smaller for the silent protest, but that's okay. We don't need tons of people. We just need a few hearty souls with signs. Regional things and study groups. So yeah, we will definitely be sharing the sign on all around. And Zoe, we will send an email with a follow-up to everyone who was registered for this call, and actually everyone who is on the Fair Districts list. So one more way that I just want to mention really quickly, I don't know if Courtney is on. No, we are of course doing election protection. It's kind of a different topic, but just to let you know, if you want materials to share, yard signs, posters, palm cards, fill out the materials request. Again, we'll send these links to you tomorrow. You can sign up to be a social media monitor and make sure that you, help make sure that Ohioans have good information on social media. There's a couple of trainings on Wednesday next week. You can sign up for poll monitor training. We're going to be doing some poll monitoring on election day, and actually I think the weekend before. So those are some options there as well. So lots of actions, lots of things to do, lots of ways to stay involved and help Ohio voters and, try to support democracy in Ohio. These are just some links. We'll share them with you, in our follow-up. If you didn't catch the webinar on last week on Tuesday, this is just a short section with just the interview. It's was pretty fun and interesting, so I highly recommend it. It's not more than 30 minutes. And some other useful links there. And that's about it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just see if anyone has any comments or questions or things that, to follow up on. Trying to get back to here. Any comments, questions? Thoughts?
Mia, when would the rally in front of the Ohio Supreme Court, would that be within the next week by any chance?
We were thinking that we would have it possibly April 28th, because the House is going to be in session on that day. So that's a possibility, but we haven't pulled the trigger yet in terms of picking a date. Jean, what is your question?
On the petition about the official statement, what happens to it after people sign and write in their comments?
Well, eventually we make a list of, for the statement part, we make a list of all the organizations and individuals that have signed, and we can send that on to the commissioners or to the General Assembly or whatever. And then for the little blurbs that people write in about themselves, we would hopefully use them on social media or, any other way that we could kind of spread the word about the people who are part of this movement.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We also got a question about voter registration. We have a second primary.
Yes.
And because we have a second primary, we anticipate a new registration deadline for that second primary.
Yes. In fact, it was interesting because the secretary was asked that question and he said just one. And then his office came back to us and said, no, there's going to be two. So if there's an August 2nd primary, which is the most likely date, the second voter registration deadline would be July 5th, I believe. Which is good in a world of complete craziness and nonsense. It's better than the alternative.
So Susan was asking about whether people could switch parties between. So we know in Ohio that the way that your party is determined is by which ballot you ask for. You can ask for a Democratic ballot, you can ask for a Republican ballot. There's nothing that stops you from switching in between. I suspect that what will happen when the state legislature establishes the new primary, or is established by the courts, the legislature will step in and make a rule about how this will work. I think it's likely if you participated in a Democratic primary, for the first one, it doesn't make sense that you can all of a sudden then vote in the Republican one, or vice versa. So, but I think this is something that the legislature will have to clearly establish.
So I think if folks ask you that question, the answer is we really don't know. And we're going to have to wait and see. And Tom asked a question here about, you know, a rumor that House and Senate candidates and Central Committee candidates would possibly have to file again. And again, we don't know that. That hasn't been said as of yet, but we don't know if that is something that might happen.
And then Jean, if you're willing to say the name of your group in Cincinnati, I think Mary's asked a couple times.
Yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot. If you're not, that's fine too.
I think she's writing it in the chat, perhaps. Yes. And these groups, by the way, this isn't like a fair districts group. It's just another civic organization. So any organization, whatever group that you belong to that doesn't have to be directly related to redistricting or anything, is welcome to sign on. I mean, you can sign on as, you know, an orchestra or a bowling team, you know, whatever you want. We're looking for organizations and individuals to sign on for sure. Well, I love a short meeting. I love to hang out with you all, but I also love a short meeting. Oh, Mindy had a question.
I was going to say, Mia, I noticed that people were trying to connect with others and think about other organizations in their area. And so one of the things that the statement will also do is help to kind of connect the different organizations that are working on this. And so we know that the League of Women Voters of Greater Dayton work on fair districts. We know that the Miami Valley Voter Protection Coalition, am I forgetting anybody else? NAACP of Dayton. I've been very active in redistricting reform and advocating for fair districts. You know, I think the thing that's exciting is about getting that list is that we'll be able to better see what groups are out there.
And Catherine, Tommy's question, is it okay if it's associated with the party? I would say yes.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that's very clear is this is both a nonpartisan and a partisan issue. You know, this is an organizational list, so feel free to add your names, and it's clear that some will be nonpartisan and some will be party.
Yeah. Mindy, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. I have a board meeting at the Delaware League tonight. Do you happen to have the language that you're asking people to sign? Because I know that they'll consider it if I can have that language.
Sure. If you can see the chat, Catherine's going to drop a link in the chat that has the language is on the form. So when you go to the form, it has a little paragraph at the beginning explaining what it's about, and then it has the language of the statement. And Mindy, I will make sure to send it to you anyway, just in case you don't have it there. So
thank you. Yeah, I'm on my phone. It's a little harder.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll send it to you, no problem. Mary, you had another question.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, so at this point, is this whole process in the hands of the court? Does the Ohio Redistricting Commission have anything else, any other role to play in this? Or is it now out of their hands and it's just the court, whether it's the Ohio Supreme Court or the federal courts, that's taking care of this now?
Well, that depends. If the fourth set of maps is struck down by the Ohio Supreme Court and they say to the Redistricting Commission, go back, you know, every time they've struck it down, they've added kind of more specific instructions. And if they give them more things to do and tell them to work again, then it could be back in their hands. Or it could be that we don't have time for that and the federal court comes in and intervenes and they, you know, make some other decision. So we don't really know the answer, but it's still possible that they would have work to do.
And we would know that by April 20th. Is that correct? Something's going to be told to us by April 20th.
We sure hope so.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I was asking Colin, I noticed that Sandy was asking about kind of the contempt question. Specifically, like what is the process for holding them in contempt? It sounds like Sandy actually wants them to be put in jail, but Colin, can you explain like what that process is, what it means, what's likely to happen or it could happen?
Yeah, sure. Well, first I will say that if anybody tells you what they know would happen in a contempt hearing, I think they're being a little full of themselves, because this is truly a once in a generation occurrence. I mean, for the Supreme Court to find members of an equal branch of government in contempt is historic. So there really isn't a playbook for this. However, the tools that are at the court's disposal for holding individuals in contempt really ranges. The only limits are kind of the imagination of the court. They can levy fines. They can compel them to, or I guess I would say, they could sentence them to a jail sentence. However, I really don't think that would be the most likely outcome. They could potentially order the commission members to be sequestered in a room. And they would have X amount of days to hash out a map in the Supreme Court room, or a room designated by the court with observers, and so the court can receive timely progress reports. But what we think would be the first step would be that the Supreme Court would hold their hearing and actually put the members of the Redistricting Commission on the stand and have them answer questions under oath as to any range of topics. At that point, it would become essentially a cross-examination period between justices and the individuals that were summoned to answer questions. I wish I had more certainty, but again, this is just such a remarkable situation we're in. It really is not something that has a great wealth of precedent behind it. So that could potentially be why the Supreme Court candidly is taking longer, because they are trying to chart a course, through a situation that's, I'm sure most people, especially the justices on the Supreme Court, did not envision that they would have to deal with. So there are a number of options. I would imagine actual jail time for the commission members is not going to happen. That's just a prediction on my part. But there could very well be, threat of, a set timeline for where if a map isn't produced, then, potentially holding them, in a jail facility. Again, I don't think that's likely, but there's quite a number of different things that can happen. The most likely of which, again, that I feel would be an actual hearing where the members of the commission would be essentially subpoenaed. And although that wouldn't be the official term for it, they would be compelled to attend a hearing where, again, they would be put under oath and asked questions by the justices. So I hope that answers your question. Again, hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully, the commission pulls out some sort of imaginative remedy that we can finally get the fair maps that we have deserved and been fighting for so long. But, we shall see. Time will tell.
There are a few other questions that have been kind of coming up in the chat. Tommy Rad asked if either of the independent mappers kind of commented on the process, and I was writing to her that the Republican mapper, Doug Johnson, had submitted an affidavit kind of supporting, as part of the kind of Republican group, but it really just stated what the process had been and when they'd started and when they'd stopped and, all that kind of thing. So they were never really asked or haven't kind of gone on record to make comments about the map that eventually was adopted, or about, kind of what they felt about what had happened. I think, there have been kind of batting around the possibility that, the Ohio Supreme Court or the federal court would ask them to come back and to continue working on their maps. So I think they've been trying to kind of, stay, and they continue to work in other states and things. So they're unlikely to make sort of political statements is my sense of it. But if others have other opinions, yeah.
If I could say,
Yeah.
I would say that, if the court were to pursue an aggressive contempt response, I think a political consideration that is very real is that if an aggressive contempt proceeding is set, that I wouldn't say automatically, but I would have to believe that significantly increases the chatter of impeachment. And impeachment is a process that we have to understand. The Republicans in the General Assembly have all the numbers that they need in order to impeach a justice under the current makeup of the General Assembly. So if they wanted to, they could do it without having to secure any sort of bipartisan support or Democratic votes, either in the House to charge or in the Senate to convict. So that is another reality that I think the court is weighing very, very heavily during this process too.
Good God. On that happy note, one last question from Mary, and then we will head home.
Sorry, yes.
Okay.
So this year in 2022, what elections are going on for the Ohio Supreme Court? Is Maureen O'Connor up for re-election?
No, she's actually aged out. Her term ends at the end of this year, and she can't run again. So there are three. There's a competition. There's a race for Chief Justice, and then there are two additional slots on the court. So, but none of them are contested in the primary. So it's just in the general.
So what is the chance of getting more seats on the Ohio Supreme Court in this election year?
Well, I would just say that there's gonna be so many oceans of money from all around the country. It's gonna be incredibly, it's just going to be a crazy, crazy scene. And I think we're all going to work hard to try to make sure that, to deflect some of the untruths that are flying around, and to, I think this is one of these cases where, like redistricting, whatever your political philosophy is, if you care about democracy and you care about representation, you really got to care about the court. And so we hope that folks will work hard on those races. But anyway, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. We will say goodnight and we will send a follow-up, and we will see you again soon. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, all.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Bye-bye, thanks.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Nice to see all your little faces.
Thanks so
Yes,
much.
nice to see you too. Thank you. Thank you.